Fight fans, welcome to the PBC podcast, brought to you by Premier Boxing Champions with your host, Kenneth Buhari and Michael Rosenthal.
Welcome, everyone, to the PBC podcast. I'm Kenneth Buhari.
And I'm Michael Rosenthal, editor of USA Today's Boxing Junkie.
Thanks for joining us this week. As always, the boxing world is buzzing right now. We saw the best boxing card of 2021 last weekend, and it culminated in Brandon Figueroa stopping Luis Nery. Speaking of Figueroa, the new WBA and WBC Super Bantamweight champion will be joining us later in the show, as will two-time world champion Showtime Shawn Porter. We're also going to take a look at the entire card last weekend, look ahead to this week's unification bout, and in this week's toe-to-toe section, we're going to take a look at the 5 standout performances of 2021 thus far. But first, let's kick things off with this one, which is hot off the presses. Daily Star's Chris McKenna was the first to report the official ruling. Arbitration judge Daniel Weinstein has ruled that Tyson Fury must honor his contractual obligation to fight Deontay Wilder, and it must be done by September 15th, 2021. Mike, we've heard a lot regarding this saga and the saga of Fury versus Anthony Joshua, but now we get something concrete. What were your thoughts when the news first broke?
Well, I guess I was somewhat surprised given all the talk about Fury Joshua, but in retrospect and really just thinking about it for a few minutes, I shouldn't have been surprised. Nobody should be surprised. This thing was always out there. It was always we knew it was happening. We always knew it was a possibility, and there you have it. The arbitrator decided that the rematch clause is binding, and that means that Fury has no choice but to fight Wilder a third time, unless they can make some kind of deal to wait on that fight. But that doesn't seem likely to me.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just glad we're hearing something concrete. For months, I repeat, for months, we've been hearing how Fury versus Joshua would be announced this week, or in a few days, or within 2 weeks. And it's crazy to think that we're almost in June and that fight still isn't any closer to being signed. It's really preposterous, but not as preposterous, in my opinion, as the media, who carried on as if the Wilder Fury legal proceeding was some unrelated nuisance that couldn't deter a fight. I think the real issue here, which I always go back to, is that, in boxing, like on boxing Twitter and so forth, it's just such an echo chamber, a lot of times we see just folks regurgitating what their favorite promoter says, fans just regurgitating what their favorite promoter says, even media doing the same thing, and not a lot of real reporting. I mean, there was nothing in depth done with regard to this arbitration, and now we are here. The judge has made his ruling, and everyone sees just how critical this was. So with that in mind, Mike, what do you expect Wilder and Fury to do next?
Well, it seems inevitable to me now that Fury will fight Wilder now instead of Joshua, especially after hearing promoter Bob Arum's comments. Arum is Fury's co-promoter. He said basically that he doesn't want to even entertain the idea of paying Wilder step-aside money. We don't even know if that money is there, and that his man will face Wilder a third time. It seems pretty clear. Even as a site and a date reserved for Fury Wilder, although obviously, all that still needs to be worked out. So I think there's a good chance we see Fury Wilder 3 this summer.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I think that's a logical thing is a third Wilder Fury fight. I mean, yeah, why pay Wilder twice? It just seems sort of odd to me. And Bob Arum, and that's what Bob Arum said. Interestingly enough, though, Malik Scott, who's the new trainer of Deontay Wilder, said that Wilder declined step-aside money and had no interest in it, and that he wants to fight. So, I'm not speaking for Deontay, but I doubt he's been fighting this hard for some step-aside money. I mean, that may be the end result. Like you, I think it's unlikely, but I don't believe that's what he wants. I believe he wants a third fight, and that's what makes sense. Now, what about Anthony Joshua? I mean, he's been waiting for months for this fight, and he seems to be the only party on that side that's, kind of like Wilder, that was mum, waiting to see what would happen, was in the gym. and now he's sort of left holding the bag.
Right. His promoter, Eddie Hearn, has already resumed talks with the handlers of Alexander Usyk. This thing just happened. He's already on the phone with Usyk's promoter. Usyk is the mandatory challenger to one of Joshua's titles. So it sounds like they're targeting a fight between those two this summer, although a venue is an issue because of the COVID-19 pandemic in the UK. And then just to sort of wrap things up, if Fury and Joshua win those fights that we're talking about or that we're speculating about, then they could fight at the end of the year. But who knows? Maybe Wilder and Usyk end up fighting for the undisputed heavyweight championship.
That'd be something.
There's still a lot to be determined.
That would totally be something. Right. I mean, I guess we'll see what happens. Still a lot in the air, as you just said, but at least we're getting closer to reality now, and no more wait another week or I was feeling like the Brooklyn Dodgers, wait till next year.
It was getting boring.
It was.
Yeah, it was just getting boring.
I think everyone was over it. Yeah. But we're just starting here, so we're going to move on with our show, beginning with the week in review. Last Saturday, we saw what was, by a good stretch, the card of the year. PBC on Showtime brought you a fantastic triple header, and the main event delivered. Brandon Figueroa and Luis Nery, two undefeated champions, faced off in a war. And as I predicted, Figueroa pulled off the stoppage, stopping Nery with a body shot in the 7th round. I mean, what more can I say? Mike, what did you think of the fight?
Well, the fight was entertaining as hell, but my main takeaway was the performance of Figueroa, who screwed up my prediction record. I'll never forgive him for that. But he looked damn good doing it. He said he was too big. He said going in he was too big, too strong, too good for Nery, and that's what he was in the end. He just did his thing. He kept the pressure on Nery. He stayed patient and gradually broke him down. I thought Nery was already starting to wilt when Figueroa landed the knockout punch, which is just brutal, by the way. I thought it was one of the best performances of the year. It was fantastic.
Yeah, I agree with you. It did go as I expected, in that I felt that Figueroa had proven to be a better fighter at 122 than Nery, and we hadn't seen that power from Nery in his first fight at 122 against Aaron Alameda, which I thought to me was a red flag, because if you can't really hurt Figueroa, then you're in for a long night. And I think that the size difference was apparent, the determination, the grit, and the infighting. Mike, when we were talking about this fight via text on Saturday night, and we talked about how Figueroa is almost like a mini Antonio Margarito. He bowls his way in. He's great volume puncher, in great condition. He throws lots of punches, and he can take a shot too. And that is awfully tough to beat. Now, what about Luis Nery? Can he bounce back from this loss?
I think he can. This is a little tricky, though. He's now had 2 fights as a full-fledged 122-pounder. Didn't seem to have the strength or punching power that he had at 118, as you've alluded to. Is it that he's just too small for 122, or did he pick on the wrong 122-pounder, which is a possibility? I think it's probably a combination of both. I'm guessing Nery would have a problem going back down to 118, but I can't be certain of that. If he can, I'd do that if I were him. If he can't go back down, I think he could still be a good fighter, but he's going to have to prove it. Maybe he just needs time to grow into the division. It's kind of a wait-and-see thing with him now.
Yeah, for sure. And I think he's got a lot to reflect on and to look over before we see him get back in the ring. But I would advise him not to jump back in the ring with one of the top guys at 122, but maybe just sort of build and work his way up. With that said, how good is Brandon Figueroa?
I think he's really good. I don't think he's the most gifted, most talented fighter in the world. I don't think he's a tremendous natural athlete. But that said, you don't necessarily have to be those things to succeed, as he showed us on Saturday. His weapons, as you've said, are just solid technique, conditioning, determination, toughness, and just sheer balls, which in combination could take a fighter a long, long way. He's just an absolute beast. I use that word a lot, but he really is just an absolute beast. If I managed fighters, I wouldn't be too enthusiastic about putting one in the ring with that guy.
Well, He is going to be in the ring with Stephen Fulton, the WBO champion, September 11th. The date is set already. What do you think of that fight, and who do you like to win?
Okay, I might live to regret this too, but I don't see how Figueroa beats Fulton. Again, Figueroa will make any opponent, including Fulton, work hard, really hard, just to survive against him. Fulton isn't Luis Nery, though. One, he's a legitimate 122-pounder, and two, he's far more talented than Nery. Fulton proved that he could handle a fighter with a similar style to that of Figueroa when he pretty easily outpointed Angelo Leo in January. I'm not saying Figueroa is necessarily Leo, but that gives you an idea of what Fulton can do against a pressure fighter, a good pressure fighter. I think Fulton wins convincingly in this fight.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I'm wondering, Angelo Leo was a fairly similar fighter to Brandon Figueroa in that, he's great volume puncher, great conditioning, threw a lot of hard shots. I don't know if he's as strong and as powerful as Brandon Figueroa. I'm talking about Angelo Leo, but we certainly have that sort of barometer. We saw Fulton in against that kind of fighter, and he really shined. The question is, it goes back to how good is Brandon Figueroa? Are we underestimating him again? I don't know. I'd have to lean toward Fulton too at this time. But look, anything can happen in that fight. It's going to be a great fight to watch. Now, in the co-feature, two-time world super bantamweight champion Danny Roman looked absolutely brilliant, turning back a stiff challenge from Ricardo Espinoza to win a 10-round unanimous decision. Mike, give us your thoughts on Roman's performance.
Yeah, I concur with you. That was a really terrific performance by him. He boxed so cleverly in the face of just constant pressure. It took him a few rounds to get rolling, but he eventually just picked apart a pretty good opponent with perfectly timed, accurate shots from just all kinds of angles. Roman doesn't have a ton of power. We probably would have scored a knockout in that fight, but Espinoza was beat up pretty good at the end of that fight. It was really an excellent performance by Roman.
Yeah, it certainly was. And I'm watching that fight. I was trying to picture him against Brandon Figueroa, and what that might look like. And I just thought to myself, man, that is a fight fan's dream. Where do you rank Roman among the 122-pounders today?
I think he demonstrated that he belongs with the top guys. Remember, he barely lost his junior featherweight titles to Akhmadaliev. That fight could have gone either way. Roman is that good. I keep thinking how good he'd be if he had more punching power, which is kind of a scary thought. But as it is, he's a superb boxer with enough power to keep his opponents honest. He's a really good fighter.
Yeah, he certainly is. I think he's a serious problem for any 122-pounder. He's as good as any of them as far as I'm concerned, and he'll make a great fight against any of them. Who should he fight next?
Well, unfortunately for him, he'll have to wait to fight one of the top guys because Figueroa is set to fight Fulton in September, as you mentioned. Maybe he can get the winner of that fight early next year. Maybe that would be the ideal thing for him. In the meantime, Roman has said he'd like a rematch with Akhmadaliev. It looks like Akhmadaliev is going to fight Ronnie Rios, though. I think I read that. So maybe a top 5 guy for Roman while he waits. Maybe a Rais Salim kind of guy. Here's an idea. How about Roman versus the aforementioned Angelo Leo?
That's a great fight.
Yeah, that's a deep division. There's a lot of guys for him to fight. A lot of good guys for him to fight.
Yeah, for sure. That's a great fight, Angelo Leo. I hadn't thought about that one. I do like the Rais Alim fight, too. I think that's another one that, man, back and forth over there. Just this division is just unbelievable. And all the fights are great. It's not just that they're top fighters, but you can mix and match and make a great fight with any of them. Now, the televised opener featured unbeaten Xavier Martinez of Mayweather Promotions take on veteran Juan Carlos Burgos in a WBA super featherweight title eliminator. And what a fight it was, just breathtaking back and forth and infighting. Now, in the end, all 3 judges saw it in Martinez's favor by a very wide margin as he won a 10-round unanimous decision. Mike, what did you think of the scorecards?
I understand why the cards were so one-sided. This reminds me of a conversation I had many years ago with Keith Kaiser, who used to be the executive director of the Nevada State Athletic Commission. We were talking about how you can have a close, competitive 12-round fight that scored 120-108, which is a shutout. That would mean that the winner won each round by a narrow margin.
Yep.
That's kind of sort of what happened in this fight. The fight was competitive, but in my opinion, and that of the judges, obviously. Martinez landed the cleaner, harder shots pretty consistently. I scored at 97-93, which is 7 rounds to 3 for Martinez. I think the closest it could have been was 96-94 in favor of Martinez. But I want to add this, though. I mean, Burgos really came to fight, man. Just tremendous respect for that guy. And I feel a little bit bad for him that the scores did look so one-sided, because that really didn't reflect what happened in the ring.
Yeah, and I think you hit the nail on the head. Yeah, the cards didn't reflect the action, or the disparity, the vast margin by which Martinez won didn't necessarily reflect the action in the ring. But this was a case, as you said, of the rounds being competitive, each one of them. But Martinez sort of edging each round, and that leads to decisions like what we saw. So although it may have sounded bad, I could see how the judges reached that conclusion. Now, speaking of Martinez, what did you make of his performance?
Strong performance. As I said, Burgos came to fight. He was fit. He was hungry. He was determined. He's like a guy who just wanted to do whatever it took to sort of remain relevant in boxing. He kept the pressure on Martinez pretty much the entire fight. And I just liked the way Martinez handled it. He never panicked, never seemed overwhelmed, not for a moment. Yeah. He just methodically found his openings and took advantage of them, while fighting pretty well defensively, too, I thought. I thought he slipped or blocked a lot of Burgos' shots. I thought it was a very good, mature performance on Martinez's part. And it was important for him to turn in such a performance. Remember, he didn't look so good in his previous fight against Claudio Marrero. So he needed to turn in a good performance, and he did.
Yeah, he certainly did. And he has that composure that I really like in young fighters that, to me, is what separates the elite from the rest. So I'm definitely keeping my eye on Xavier Martinez. Who would you like to see him face next?
Martinez said he wants to fight Chris Colbert next or soon. That's a legitimate matchup. The WBA ranks Colbert number 1 and Martinez number 2. Gervonta Davis is the champion, but he's going to be fighting at 140. I guess Martinez is ready for that fight. Although I think in a perfect world, maybe I'd wait a little longer for that kind of challenge. Honestly, I'm not sure anybody can beat Colbert, anybody in the world. So that'd be a really tough fight for Martinez. But Martinez is good. I think he could hang with all the top guys. So I think you can pick any top 10, top 15 guy and just go for it with him.
Yeah, I love the Colbert fight. I don't know if it's seasoned enough, but I just really like the matchup. 2 young, composed guys who know how to fight well on the inside, who have those subtle skills that you really don't see as much in boxing. So I hope it happens, whether next or down the line. I would love to see it. Now, in our prediction league, I continue to pull away. Now 15-1-2. Mike is an unsightly 12-4-2.
I want to respond to that before you finish. Sorry, go ahead.
Go for it.
I was going to say I'm Brandon Figueroa. I'm saying my opponent's going to get some shots in, or in the early rounds, but I'm going to stick with it, and I'm going to break you down, and I'm going to end up with my hand raised at the end of the year.
Okay, I understand, but you know what? You may be Brandon Figueroa, but I'm Stephen Fulton, so we'll see how the fight plays out.
Uh-oh, I'm in trouble. I'm in serious trouble.
Yet to see how things play out, and of course, we got our predictions for Saturday night's fight a little bit later in the show, but now it's time to bring in our first guest. You saw him deliver one of the most impressive performances of 2021 last Saturday with the 7th round TKO win over Luis Nery. He is the Heartbreaker, the WBC and WBA regular super bantamweight world champion, Brandon Figueroa. Brandon, it's been a couple days since your big win over Luis Nery on Saturday. Has what you accomplished hit you yet?
I don't think it has yet. I don't know. I still need to probably, just wait a couple more days and it'll probably hit me then. But as of right now, I'm just enjoying my time with my family and friends and just taking a little step back. And I can't wait to go back to the gym as well. But as of right now, I don't think it's hit me yet.
Well, you definitely deserve to take some time to reflect. How did you celebrate your victory?
With family and friends, we went out to eat to In-N-Out and just talk about the fight night, and everyone was just expressing their emotions and what they felt throughout the training camp and the fight. It was just a surreal feeling. And not only that, but I did it with my family, which is, to me, it's more valuable. It's more precious that, we went through it all with my family.
Brandon, congratulations. Fantastic performance. You stopped Nery with a body shot in the 7th, but at what point during the fight did you realize that he was starting to slow down?
I mean, it was almost right away. I think in the 3rd, 4th, I think it was just the first 2 rounds that, he came out, strong. And after that, I felt like my pressure got to him. And that was the game plan, just to keep putting that pressure just to wear him out easier and just break him down. And that's exactly what I did. It just made sure that, I knew that his conditioning wasn't going to be with my conditioning. And not only that, but, I just took advantage that he always, has trouble making weight. And, this time probably was no exception. And so, we just took it to him from the get-go and, we got the job done.
Were there particular punches you think hurt him, or was it just sort of the overall assault?
Yeah, I mean, there was numerous amounts of times where I felt like I hurt him to the body, to the head, where I rocked him a couple times, and it was just a combination of everything. It's crazy. I mean, once you're inside and you see different things, you see his facial expressions and just the body language that he didn't want to continue. And I saw that, and I just made sure that I executed on my punches and made sure that I got those body shots off, and kept tagging him all night, kept making him miss, and I just made sure that I got him with the right body shot.
Yeah, he sure did. He landed a pretty good left in the 1st round. He landed a couple shots here and there. Were you hurt at all by that shot or any shot in the fight?
No, I mean, I did feel his power. I did feel his power, his strength, his speed, but I feel like it was just like the 1st round that he really brought it onto me. But after that, I felt like with the pressure, just with the constant, just putting that pressure on him, the volume of punches, and just those sneaky little body shots that I was sneaking in there and I was tagging him, I think those were like the ones that were hurting him. And, I had to take it to him. I had to fight dirty. I had to not necessarily fight dirty, but I just had to, get on the inside and make sure that he there had no room to breathe. Because as you saw, he tried to box a little bit, like in the 4th, 5th round.
Yeah.
And he tried to get his air back. And, someone like me can't allow that to happen, because then he'll get his air back, he'll get his confidence back, and that's a chance for him to get back in the fight.
You sort of alluded to this, but did you know going in that he just wasn't going to be able to go toe-to-toe with you, nor did he have the stamina to stay away for the full 12 rounds?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I knew it. All my hard work in the gym, had paid off, and I knew that he wasn't going to stand toe-to-toe with me and go 12 rounds in a war, because I knew that he wasn't prepared for it. I knew I was just going to outwork him and outland him, and that's exactly what we did. We just dominated him and just made sure that he had no chance of coming back into the fight.
This is not a knock on Nery, but the fight sort of unfolded how most of your fights unfold, which is that eventually your pressure, your volume punching wears people down. Was there anything different about this fight at all? Was it tougher than other fights that you've had?
I mean, I guess it's just the intensity of it. I guess just what was at risk, what was at stake was just higher. And, I didn't want to let anything slip away. I didn't want to let, any chance of me not going home with the belt. And I felt like I just did my job. I went in there. I made sure that, he wasn't going to get an easy fight, and that I was going to make him work for defending the belt. And I made sure that, I made him that. I surprised him, basically, in other words.
Now, a lot of guys work hard in the gym to get fit. A lot of guys are strong. You seem to take it to another level. Can you explain that?
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's just when you're in a fight, sometimes you get hit with shots that you're not prepared for, or you get injured, or you mess up your hand, or just little injuries that can hold you back in the fight. And I feel like if you train hard, you always train, at an intense speed and at an intense rate, then I feel like in a fight, everything will just be simplified for you. I feel like if you got injured in a fight, you have what it takes. You have the conditioning, you have that extra strength to work around that or to adapt or to fight around that. And I feel like that's what a lot of boxers, need to learn or need to like pay attention to, because it's tough in there. I mean, it's tough in there once you're in there. I mean, you can't call for timeouts or you can't take a little break. It's just you got to go out there and fight.
Right. Overall, 1 to 10, how would you rate your performance?
I would probably say like a 7. I feel like I could have done things a little bit more cleaner, more better. I guess I was just excited. I was just excited to get in there and fight and mix it up. And I guess I got caught up a little bit in the moment, but definitely for Stephen Fulton, I know he's more of a boxer, and obviously we have to go in there with a different game plan and utilize more of a boxing technique, I guess.
If that was a 7, the thought of a 10 is kind of scary.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of people. Sorry, go ahead.
No. Yeah. I mean, I'm just really hard on myself, and obviously I just want to do better and get better.
Fantastic. A lot of people saw that as a breakout or a breakthrough performance for you. What do you think you proved or said to the fans and to the pundits out there?
Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of people were on his team, on his side, and they didn't really believe me. That a lot of people doubted me. That's why after the win, a lot of people were quiet. Mostly the whole StubHub or Dignity Health Park was almost quiet and in shock, because they didn't think I was going to do it. They didn't think I was going to win, especially in the fashion that I did. And I mean, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with people always doubting me, underestimating me. But at the end of the day, I mean, I just go out there and fight, and I did exactly what I did. And I feel like people didn't expect that.
Now, your brother Omar was at the fight. I saw a clip of him on Twitter, cheering you on when you scored the knockout. He had fought a couple weeks before you, lost to Abel Ramos. What were your thoughts on what happened that night?
Yeah, I mean, it's part of boxing. It's part of the sport. You win some, you lose some. And I guess it's all in the preparation. If you prepare yourself at 110%, then that's how you're going to fight. My brother did have issues during his training camp, but that's his deal. I feel like everyone was in charge of their own destiny, their own training camp, their own decisions. And I feel like if only he knows what he did wrong, or only he knows what he did in training camp that didn't allow him to go out there and execute his game plan. But yeah, I mean, I don't let that faze me. If anything, it motivated me, and we push each other. That's at the end of the day. We both push each other, and we just want the best for each other. And he was there cheering me on like crazy, and I mean, I couldn't want anything more than that.
Now, you're now slated to face Stephen Fulton in September. How excited are you for that match?
I mean, I'm probably as excited as this one, and I'm just blessed and, to have the opportunity to face these, world-class fighters now, and, fighting for these belts that, I've dreamed of. So it's going to be another amazing fight, and I just can't wait to prepare for that one as well. I know my game plan is going to be very different, because the box is very different. Styles make fights, and I guess I just got to, go back to the drawing board, go back with my team, and just, tweak my mistakes, and just, go out there and make sure I win the fight.
What are your thoughts on Fulton as a fighter specifically, and then how do you see the fight playing out?
Yeah, he's more of a boxer puncher. He's more of a, he's want to keep me at a distance, and I got to make sure that I go in there, box him, get inside, do what I do best, which is work the body, and then step out. I mean, that's one thing that with Nery, I know I just had to put the pressure on him nonstop, but I know with Stephen Fulton it's going to be different. I have to actually box him and make sure that I fight a smart fight. In other words, that's it.
According to Fulton, you guys were supposed to have fought sometime in the past. Do you remember what that was and what happened?
Yeah, I think it was after when he fought Adam Lopez. We were all up-and-coming prospects, and, we all wanted to prove each other. And I remember I think I wanted to fight both of them after, but I know I don't know what happened. And that's when, the fight didn't happen. So then we started, just doing what we do, which is just fight after that. And then I guess that's when I wanted my interim belt, and then that's when he wanted to fight me. But I mean, I already had, I guess, like other fights lined up, and he wanted to fight me. So he was saying that I was ducking him, but I mean, I'm not scared to fight anyone, and that's one thing that me and my team, we never say no to any fight. As soon as the fight is presented to us, we always say yes, and we're always ready to go. So now that everything's been going on, I mean, I'm just happy to fight him. Finally a fight that I've been wanting for a long time, and because I know he's good and I'm good, and we just want to prove to see who's the best.
For sure. Now, beyond Fulton, there are other fighters at super bantamweight. Are there any other guys, let's say, assuming you get past Fulton or what have you, that you'd be interested in facing?
At this point, is whoever, I know from here to Stephen Fulton is a pretty long period, so we'll see what happens if any other 122-pounders step up and fight. I mean, I'm willing to fight whoever at this point. And, like I said, styles make fights, and I feel like I have a very unique style for any type of fighter. And I mean, it's just a matter of time until I get in there and mix it up with mostly all of them. But at the end of the day, I mean, I just want to fight great fighters and give great fights.
You're pretty big for the 122-pound division. You obviously stay in great condition. Do you see yourself moving up in weight at some point?
Yeah, of course. Maybe we'll do one or two more fights at 122, and then probably move to 126. I mean, right now the game plan is just Stephen Fulton, and then after that we'll see what goes from there. But if anything, I'll probably move to 126 next year.
Well, we can't wait to see you against Fulton. We can't wait to see you back in the ring, period. Brandon, again, congratulations on that big win Saturday night, one of the finest performances of this year. We look forward to getting you back in the ring and getting you back on here afterward.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you, guys.
It's time to take a quick look ahead to Saturday's showdown for the undisputed 140-pound crown. WBC and WBO champion Jose Ramirez faces WBA and IBF champion Josh Taylor. Mike, no question, this is one of the best fights of the year. Style-wise, how do you see it playing out?
That's a tough one. This is, well, first of all, this is a 50-50 fight if there ever was one. Now, both guys are former Olympians who can box, they can punch, they're tough. It's really hard to separate them. I imagine it's going to be a technical fight, at least in the first several rounds. They try to pick up on advantages that they might have. But eventually, I guess they're going to go at it. I guess they're going to have no choice. The fight might come down to who's tougher, who can take a punch better, because both of them are going to land hard shots.
Yeah, for sure. And also who's a little quicker on the draw too. Because these are two mid-range fighters who like to operate at that distance or work their way inside and get off their punches. So like you, I think at some point a fight's going to break out, and it's going to be a question of who gets to who first. How important will each fighter's corner be in the fight? You've got Ben Davison in Taylor's corner and Robert Garcia in Ramirez's corner. How big a role do they play?
I think both guys have good, experienced trainers. I'm sure they'll be prepared when they step into the ring because of that. And yes, these guys are so evenly matched that instructions between the rounds, the adjustments that they're going to have to make, could turn out to be the difference in the fight. Sure. I like both guys again, but you have to give the edge to Garcia, who's been there as a fighter and a trainer for so long and with such tremendous success. But honestly, they're both in really good hands.
Yeah, absolutely. And with that said, who are you picking?
I honestly don't know where to go, except to my gut, which has failed me 3 times so far this year. Ramirez didn't look great against Victor Postol in his last fight, but that came after a 13-month layoff, so I'm not 100% sure what to make of that. Taylor has been just blowing people out, except for the Regis Prograis fight, which was expected to be really close, but that was really a good win for Taylor. It said a lot about him, I think. Prograis is as good as Taylor and Ramirez, and Taylor beat him. So based on the recent past and the fact that I've always liked Taylor's ability and toughness, I'm going to say with great trepidation that the Scot will win by a close decision.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a close decision as well. I am, however, going with Jose Ramirez.
Ooh.
Now, unlike other upset picks that I've made this year, this is probably the toughest one to make. I think Josh Taylor is a truly special fighter, one of the best fighters in the world today. So this is not a knock on him. He's a great fighter, but I've always been a fan of Ramirez's potential. I feel he's been inconsistent in a lot of fights, but I've seen the flashes, and when he puts it together, he's hard to beat. This guy with pedigree, he's an Olympian.
Yeah,
he's got
really
a great corner. He has experience at this level. He's a young veteran. I think his quickness and tenacity will allow him to win exchanges, and that should be enough for him to win a decision. But, Mike, I'm with you. I mean, this fight could go either way. No matter what, though, no matter who ends up losing, I think we can both agree that the fans win this one. Now, with that, it's time to bring in our next guest this week. He is a two-time world welterweight champion, one of the great guys of the sport today, and one of the busiest. Showtime, Shawn Porter. Shawn, first things first, how are you and the family doing?
Everybody's good, man. Life is great for me. Got a lot going on, staying busy, just kind of enhancing who I am as a person and as an athlete, and everything is going smoothly for me.
I hear things have opened up in Vegas, and that the energy is returning over there. Is it starting to feel normal again?
People, I think people might not believe me when I say this, but my life kind of was a quarantine before everything happened. So it really, honestly, man, not much changed for me during this pandemic. Which I'm not saying that to boast or brag, but I was really able to start some new business ventures during this pandemic. I was able to manage the life that I was already living with my family and with boxing and everything. So, I mean, everything has been very great for me, and nothing really changed between the course of the start of the pandemic till now. I think the only thing that changed was I wasn't able to travel as much for work, but eventually we got back doing that, so when you talk about the energy here in Vegas, my energy between myself and my friends and my family has always been there. We did, for the first time, get with some friends that we hadn't been with practically since the pandemic started, and that was great. Nice. But for the most part, I don't really go to the strip. I don't go out to the restaurants, to the clubs, or anything like that. So I imagine, and I don't really have to drive the strip to get to the gyms and things like that. So I would imagine people are going to start flocking here as soon as they hear that they can come back. And I'm sure that the energy is going to be exactly the way that it was before this pandemic.
Shawn, I know you caught last Saturday's Showtime card. What were your thoughts on Brandon Figueroa's big win over Luis Nery, and also just the card in general?
I'm going to be honest, man. I was happy for Brandon Figueroa. I didn't see him pulling this fight out. And in fact, I actually saw him on the side that Luis Nery was on. I think that he has impressive stamina. He has an impressive work rate. And I think that it really is going to be something that's going to be hard to contend with that 122. I mean, we've seen it from him to this point in his career. And to do what he's done before, I think for myself, I always said that it was the competition that he was up against. But then to do that exact same thing against Luis Nery, who really is not a walk in the park, I mean, he made it seem that way. And so I really am not so much impressed by him, but just very happy for him to be able to pull that one out.
You're slated to be the boxing analyst for the Olympics this summer. Is that still happening, and are you currently preparing for that?
It's happening. I have not really began preparing for that just yet. I did have some other things that I've had going on to this point. I don't expect that I'll start really preparing for the Olympic Games until maybe mid-July. They begin at the end of July. I feel that it's very easy for me to get on a on the stage and do the commentary and do the analytical work for fighting. I've seen it so many times, and even at the amateur stage and the world Olympic stage, I've seen it and been there so many times as well. So I don't really think outside of learning names and learning, who these guys are and their accolades, I don't think that there's much more that I will really need to do to prepare.
Working the Olympics is something unusual, obviously. How exciting is that for you?
It's very exciting. I wasn't able to perform in the Olympic Games. I was a alternate in 2008, and so for me to go back to the Olympic Games and see those guys kind of do what they want to do as amateurs on the Olympic stages, for me, I got a feeling I'm going to have a lot of nostalgia, and it's going to be another memorable moment for me, along with being there in 2008.
Now, you've got your own podcast, the Porter Way, which has been on for a while now. Has it changed your perspective of the sport now that you're seeing it from both sides?
No, not at all. I think, if anything, I think that the thing that I enjoy doing and a lot of people enjoy about my podcast is it's kind of like you get the inside scoop on what's going on. I think a lot of times people can read on social media or read or see what's going on, and that's all that they know, but they know what's being reported from other reporters. They don't know what's really going down because the fighters aren't really voicing what's going on. And so I think a lot of people understand that I have a perspective that not very many reporters have in terms of me being able to perform in the sport as well as talk about the sport. So I think that that's why a lot of people gravitate towards my podcast, along with the co-hosts that I have on my show. And we like to add a lot of entertainment as well. But I think just being on this side of it and seeing people's reactions to a lot of things, I think that that's caught me a little bit by surprise. But I definitely do not look at the sport any different, and I treat it the very same, very fair, and things like that. So I enjoy it.
Now, speaking of perspective and getting to your boxing for a moment, there were rumors that you were going to fight Terence Crawford. Then we heard he was going to fight Manny Pacquiao, which fell through. Now it seems like you won't get that fight either. Why do you think the fight didn't occur? And is there still a window to make it happen?
Are you asking me about my fight, fighting Crawford? If
That's
there's
right.
Still a window for that fight?
And yes, and why do you think it didn't or hasn't occurred?
Yeah, I think it hadn't occurred because Terence he wants the best for his career. He wants the best for himself and his family, and I get that. And I think that when you take a look at Shawn Porter opposed to Manny Pacquiao, I think that there's no secret that the Manny Pacquiao fight is just the biggest fight out there that can be made for any fighter in the welterweight division. So I think that he was holding on to that as long as he could, and I think that he's gonna do everything that he can to make that fight happen. And then until he knows that there's no way at all that fight's not gonna happen, then he'll move forward. I think that those are the reasons why the fight hasn't been made between myself and Terence Crawford. Not any one promotion or either of us not really wanting the fight.
Now this is the second time where you've sort of pushed for the fight. I remember last summer something similar happened. Do you feel like you sort of wasted your time chasing that fight, or is that something you still see as happening in the near future?
Well, you know what? I can't say that I wasted my time chasing that fight. I really wouldn't say that I was chasing it. I think that I just was very vocal about wanting that fight. And I think that, if anything, my heart says that that's the best fight for me. And so for those reasons, I didn't let it go. But I don't think that I necessarily wasted time on it. I think that everything happens for a reason. Everything for me happens on time. So once my dad came to me in the last 2 weeks and said, "Hey, I don't think that fight's going to be made. Let's move forward and figure out what else we're going to do in this sport. And that's exactly what I did. And so we have identified that July is going to be the month that I'll be back in the ring. And I think that it's going to be right on time for me.
Okay. There are several other big names at 147, assuming you don't get the fight with Crawford for a second. Would you be interested in a Jamal James or even a Keith Thurman rematch?
Both of those names are on the list. We don't know who we're going to get yet, but both of those names are on the list.
Okay. We also wanted to throw out Mikey Garcia. We saw you guys working together on Fox, so that got people speculating that maybe you two would fight. Is that another one that's a possibility?
Mikey is on the list as well, but I'll be honest, he's the very last name on the list. I don't think that it's a fight that he really wants, and I respect that. And I have to also say, just like fighting Terence Crawford, I never saw myself fighting Terence. I never saw myself fighting Mikey. So Mikey is committed to the 147-pound division, which is why I did put him on my list. But he's at the bottom of my list because I didn't really see myself fighting him. Nothing personal or anything like that at all. But he is on the list because he's one of the top fighters in the division. And so because of those reasons, I say, hey, you know what? Never saw myself fighting this guy, but I am going to put him on my list because he's at the top of the division.
We wanted to get your thoughts on a rising 147-pounder, Jaron Ennis. What are your thoughts on Ennis, and could he be a potential opponent?
I saw him for about 30 seconds yesterday on FaceTime. He's a special fighter. Yep. He's one of the best out there right now. I think the only thing that is riding against him is his age and his lack of experience in terms of him fighting at the elite championship level, which is why he is not on my list and not in my radar. I think that the things I've done to this sport has commanded that I fight guys like Terence Crawford, Manny Pacquiao, Errol Spence Jr., Keith Thurman, and, if you aren't someone who's been at this level as long as we have, then I don't see myself getting in the ring with any of those guys.
So you've mentioned the list several times now. Who is on the list? We know Mikey's at the bottom. Who's on top? And are there any other names that you can share with us?
Nope. I'll share the names that you guys mentioned: Jamal James, Keith Thurman, and Mikey Garcia. Those are the three names that I will share. Out of five.
Out of five. Okay. we got to get our sleuths on this. Try to figure out who the other two are. And you're thinking about a July return? Is that what you said?
Yes, sir. Okay,
I like it.
To change subjects completely, we also want to pick your brain on something else. An arbitrator just ruled that in Deontay Wilder's favor, says that Tyson Fury must face him by September 15th. So is that, from your perspective, is that the fight we're going to see next?
Well, obviously, so again, I don't think a lot of people really understand this about boxing, but boxing is a business. And boxing is always going to do whatever the business says that it should do. Now, business in terms of legally has mandated even that Tyson Fury face Deontay Wilder in September. If that doesn't happen, there's probably going to be a lawsuit ensued. There's probably going to be another hang-up on both of those guys' careers, which no one wants. And so that fight is more than likely going to be the fight we see in September.
Crazy. Yeah. Okay. If Wilder and Fury fight again, it looks like Alexander Usyk might get a fight with Anthony Joshua for the title in the meantime. Now, you fought and beat Usyk in the amateurs, if we got that straight.
Yeah.
Do you think, well, actually, tell us what you remember about that fight. And I also want to ask, do you think he could be a good heavyweight and actually challenge Joshua?
Yeah, I'll tell the whole thing. Great fight that we had back in 2007. I believe we both were 20 or 21 at that point in time. We fought at 165 pounds. He may have been an inch or two shorter than he is right now. Of course, weighing a little less than he does now. He wasn't a string bean. He was a filled out 165-pound fighter. I think it was a great fight beginning to end. It was a close fight beginning to end. I think I ended up winning the fight. Back then we were doing a point system. Every time you get hit, 3 out of 5 judges have to push a button.
Right.
If they do, you get the point. If they miss it within that second window, you don't get the point. I ended up winning the fight, I think, by 2 points, 3 points. I mean, it was close. It was exciting. It was great. Probably the fight of the night. And I do think that since then, he has grown and matured as a fighter. The thing I did see lacking in his last fight was power. He has to improve his power at heavyweight. Once he does that, no, he won't be a Roy Jones at heavyweight, but he will be Roy Jones-esque in terms of him being faster and more mobile and agile than a lot of the heavyweight fighters of today, with the exception, of course, of Tyson Fury. So I do think that he can contend with Anthony Joshua, but I think over the course of 12 rounds, if the power's not there, Anthony Joshua may catch up to him and pull out the win. But I think that he's got all the attributes outside of power to be a majority of the heavyweights.
Interesting.
Oh, yeah, I like that. Now, do you kind of root for Usyk to win the heavyweight title so you can have the satisfaction of saying, hey, I beat the heavyweight champion of the world?
I got to be honest with you. Most times I watch fights, I don't really like to pick a winner. I don't like to predict fights and things, so on and so forth. But there are a select few guys out there that I root for because of a personal connection with them. Yeah. That being Terence Crawford, that being, of course, Manny Pacquiao. Recently in the Luis Nery and Brandon Figueroa fight, I've met Luis Nery a handful of times. I had commentated some of his, did some analytical work for some of his fights, and so I was rooting for him in his fight. In this fight with Brandon Figueroa, was I disappointed that he didn't win? No. Was I disappointed at how he lost the fight? Yes, because I felt like he should have fought harder and had more grit and might than getting stopped by a body shot the way that he did. We got Hank Lundy's fight this coming weekend. Hank's a great personal friend of mine. I'm always going to root for Hank, no matter who it is he's in the ring with. But for the most part, I don't really have a winner or loser in my mind who I want to win. However, yeah, when it comes to Alexander Usyk, because of our experience in the ring together, I just want to see him prosper and become successful no matter what. I don't want to say, oh, yeah, I beat him once upon a time. If nobody talks about that fight, it doesn't get talked about. I'm never going to bring it up, but when people bring it up, I do smile and get excited about it, because that was definitely a really good fight that I had back in the day with him. And to see us now, I'm so far down in terms of weight class, and he's so far up now in terms of weight divisions. It's a special story. But no, I don't want to see him become heavyweight champion so that I can personally say I beat a heavyweight. I just want to see him do the best and prosper as a champion in the sport.
It's a great answer. Shawn, in 2014, you lost a razor-thin decision to Kell Brook. Today, it's like you're a totally different fighter. What improvements have you made over the years to get to this point?
And you know what? I think I've held on to it. When I lost that fight, the locker room was, sad. The locker room was upset. But my dad and I, we had a really good understanding of what had happened that night, and so there was this sense of disappointment and this sense of shoulda, coulda, woulda type of mindset, right? And so we go back and we watch the fight, and I'm literally shaking my head after about 3 rounds. I'm just shaking my head, and my dad's just he's disappointed, and he knows, you should have listened to me is basically what it amounted to. And what I took from that fight was I attacked Kell Brook the exact same way from round 1 to round 12. And I made up my mind after that fight that I would never, ever do that again. I'll never come to the ring with one game plan or one state of mind that this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to do this until it works, because it was very evident that it didn't work in the fight that I had with Kell Brook. And so I really held on to that. And I really wasn't out to prove that I can be a different fighter every fight. However, I think that I have really not shown up at every fight the exact same fighter since that fight. I think you get a kind of a different flavor from me every time I'm in the ring. And it really is a result of me not getting the result that I wanted in that fight with Kell Brook.
Wow.
I recognized and understood very quickly what I did wrong, and I made some mental adjustments, of course physical adjustments, and I kind of vowed that I'd never go to the ring with one game plan, one state of mind, expecting that to be the only thing that would lead me to victory. And, I've really held on to that.
Shawn, you just mentioned your dad, Kenny Porter, who obviously has done a great job with you over the years. We were just curious about something. Has he worked with any other fighters, or has he considered, working with any other fighters?
He has, at this very moment, 3 fighters signed under contract right now. The first fighter he has is a fighter from Macon, Georgia. His name is Malik Montgomery. When he signed Malik was 4-0. I think had been out of the ring for about a year to a year and a half, contract dispute. My dad helped him with the contract and got him back going, and now he's 10-0 with 10 knockouts. My dad is taking 2 fighters this weekend down to South Carolina. One fighter is a Dominican fighter who was on the Olympic team, decided to come here to the States and turn pro instead of fighting in the Olympic Games. His name is Hendry Martinez. He is 1-0, 1 knockout, and he's going for 2-0, 2 knockouts this weekend. And my dad's got him on a little bit of a fast track. His first fight was contracted for 4 rounds. This one's contracted for 6. And I think that anybody in the fight game knows that when you're moving into a 6-rounder and only your second fight, there's only bigger and greater things in the near future for him. And then my dad is turning another fighter pro this weekend by the name of Marcus. What's Marcus's last name? Marcus Davidson. And he also has a brother that my dad has not signed yet, but intends to sign as well. And they're from Kansas City. He's making his debut this weekend. So my dad's got some young guys, some guys he feels are going to listen and do what he expects them to do, a lot like I did. And I think that he's going to, in a lot of ways, model their careers after what he did with me. And, of course, everyone's different. So he's going to do whatever he needs to do for those guys. And I'll give you a prime example of that is I think my first 5 fights were scheduled for 4-rounders, and he's got his Dominican fighter right now already scheduled for a 6-rounder and only his second fight. So my dad knows what he's doing. He loves what he does, and he's going to keep doing it.
Great stuff. To close it out, back to you. You're 33 years old. Still young, but not as young as you used to be. You're a well-respected 2-time world champion. You've made a lot of money. You don't seem like the type of guy to throw your money away. What's left for you to accomplish in boxing as a boxer?
Yeah, man. I've been saying this for a little while now. It's not about what I do, but who I do it against. I'm not really so much out for belts anymore, and I'm not really so much out for the money at this point in time. I'm really out for who is going to help me cement my legacy. I think that I've done some things to this point in my career that has really left a mark on boxing. I actually hear people now at amateur fights and even professionals now saying, yeah, he's got the Shawn Porter style. Never saw myself having the type of fighting style that people would emulate, but it's very humbling. And for me to be able to see and hear people say, hey, man, my guy has the Shawn Porter style, that lets me know that my legacy really is being formed into exactly what I wanted it to be. I just wanted to be remembered in the sport for doing great things, and I've been able to do that. And I think that it's not so much of more great things that I do, but who I do those great things against. I think that's why I know that's why I was so vocal about fighting Terence Crawford. I feel like that's a legacy fight for me. A fight that I just had with Errol Spence Jr., a legacy fight right there. Keith Thurman and I, we fought first fight on CBS since like the late 80s or early 80s or something like that, and it was fight of the year. You know what I mean? A legacy fight. You know, so I know a lot of fighters right now that they're talking about legacy, but I've been talking about legacy since I turned pro. You know, that I just always wanted to have a Marvin Hagler type of career where people remember me in and out of the ring for a very long time, and you know that's basically what I've been out for since I turned pro. You know, so it's really coming to, and you know I don't really think that there's much more for me to do in the sport, but who I'm going to do it against. And you know, you'd say, hey, do you think you wasted time waiting on the fight with Terence Crawford? No, I don't, because I was waiting on my legacy to be fulfilled. I was working on doing things that would help me fulfill the legacy that I feel needs to be left here for me, you know. So I think at this point, man, it's just a select few fighters out there that I got to get my hands on, and once I do that, I'm done.
Great stuff. Shawn, you might be the busiest guy in boxing, so we really appreciate you taking the time out to be with us.
Man, it's a pleasure to be on the line with you guys. Thank you for your time, and thank you for acknowledging that I am the busiest guy in boxing. I've been hearing that lately, and I do appreciate that label, and I'm definitely working hard to maintain it.
Fantastic. All the best to you.
Thanks, Shawn.
Guys, take care.
All right, it's time for Mike and I to go toe to toe. This week, we're going to look at the top 5 performances of 2021. I love that year, of 2021. Of course, we'll go in ascending order. And Mike, we'll start with you and your number 5.
Okay, I'm going to start with the fight that we just saw. Brandon Figueroa's knockout of Luis Nery. As we've noted here, I picked Nery to win. I thought he was the more talented and possibly harder hitting guy. And as you pointed out, I couldn't have been more wrong. Figueroa showed that his victory by attrition style works at a very high level. He took a significant step in his career on Saturday.
Yeah, he certainly did. And I like what you said about his victory by attrition style. That's certainly a great way to put it. A very, very impressive performance. Now, my number 5 was Brian Carlos Castaño versus Patrick Teixeira. Castaño won a 12-round unanimous decision over Teixeira to take away his WBO World Super Welterweight title and set up a showdown versus the man with 3 belts, Jermell Charlo. But beyond that, it was how Castaño won. He dominated Teixeira, was the better boxer, better brawler. The amount of pressure he put on and the skill that accompanied it was just remarkable. A lot of folks consider him extremely live against Charlo based on this performance, and Mike, it's easy to see why.
Yeah, Castaño and Teixeira was one of my honorable mentions. I had 3 honorable mentions that I'll mention later on, and that was one of the 3. Yeah, I loved his performance in that fight. He's fun. He's really good, and he's fun to watch. But the best thing about that performance is that it sets up that fight with Jermell Charlo. I absolutely cannot wait for that fight.
Yeah, I can't believe it's next. You know, typically you got to wait a few years for undisputed fight when it's right there to be made. Let's go to number 4. Should you go, or you want me to tackle this one first?
We can go back and forth in the order. Go for it.
Yeah, sure. All right, so my number 4 is Ryan Garcia versus Luke Campbell. Now, this one occurred on January 2nd. It's undefeated lightweight Garcia knocking out the veteran Campbell in 7 rounds. Big step up for the heavily hyped Garcia, and it didn't look good for him early on. He got dropped in the 2nd round, but he got up, he walked Campbell down, and then he finished him off with a vicious body shot, Mike. I think at that point, Garcia graduated from prospect to contender, and he did it in really impressive fashion.
That fight's on my list, so I'll say more about it later. So obviously we're in general concurrence on that.
Okay. All right. It's going to get really, really interesting then. My number 3.
Now I got to do my number 4.
No, you got to go your number 4. Go for it.
Okay. My number 4 is Jaron Ennis, KO6, Sergey Lipinets. Now, I'll admit that Ennis is here in part because I'm so excited about him. He's basically my favorite young fighter. But that was a hell of a performance that he gave against Lipinets. Lipinets isn't a pounder-for-pounder, but he's a proven, solid, tough, experienced guy who was supposed to test Ennis, and in the end, it was just an utter mismatch. Ennis just dominated Lipinets in every conceivable way. It just sort of underscored what I already thought about Ennis, that he's as special as anybody in boxing right now.
Yeah, Ennis is one of my honorable mentions. And I think that, I mean, you and I, we've spoken about him at length on this podcast several times, many times. And I almost expected that performance from him against Lipinets, as impressive as it was. And that's probably the reason why it didn't make the cut for me. But he's just a special, special fighter. And I got a feeling that if we continue doing these lists on the podcast, that we'll see him again on it. Now, time for number 3. Who you got?
Okay. Number 3 is, and honestly, this could be number 1. Stephen Fulton, unanimous decision over Angelo Leo. Fulton is another young guy that I'm really excited about. As I said, I see Leo as a Figueroa-like fighter, a well-conditioned, durable guy who keeps pressure on his opponents. He's a slugger. And Fulton, who could have boxed if he wanted to and probably won easily, he outslugged the slugger to win almost every round. He beat Leo, a good fighter at his own game. I thought that was a particularly brilliant performance.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I have that on my list as well, so I will withhold comment for now. But my number 3 is Luis Nery versus Brandon Figueroa. We saw it Saturday in the main event. Figueroa unifying the WBC and WBA regular 122-pound titles with the left hook to Nery's ribs in round 7. A stunning victory for many, an impressive one. More importantly, Mike, I know you've sort of spoken on it, so perhaps we should go ahead and jump to number 2.
Okay, I think you go first on number 2.
All right. Well, my number 2 occurred this February when Oscar Valdez impressively stopped Miguel Berchelt in 10 rounds to become the WBC World Super Featherweight Champion. Valdez was the underdog coming in, had looked sort of up and down, training with Eddie Reynoso in recent fights, but he dropped Berchelt 3 times, capped that with a vicious KO to end the fight, and established himself as one of the best fighters in the world and a 2-division champion, Mike.
That fight's on my list, so you'll get more from me later. And once again, we are in general concurrence on that.
Okay, so who you got for number 2?
Number 2 for me is Ryan Garcia's knockout over Luke Campbell. The thing I like most about that performance isn't the body shot necessarily that took out Campbell, although that was a brutal body shot. Obviously, it ended the fight. It was the fact that Garcia had to get up from the knockdown to do it. He showed resilience, and he stopped a good, experienced opponent in dramatic fashion, which is always a good thing. That was a great, great night for him. And I'll just throw this in, and I wish him the best, and I hope we get to see him again soon.
Yeah, certainly. I agree with you. Hopefully, we do get him back in the ring very, very soon. And now we are at number 1. Senor Rosenthal.
Number 1 is the one you just mentioned, Oscar Valdez, KO 10, Miguel Berchelt. I know Berchelt isn't the greatest technician. I know he can be hit. That said, he's a big puncher who'd just been blowing out every one of his opponents. And in February, Valdez just beat him up. He put him down 3 times and stopped him in 10 rounds. It was just really a special performance, great performance on Valdez's part.
Yeah, I completely agree. That's why it was on my list. That number 2 and could easily have been number 1. And my number 1 is one that you said could have easily been your number 1. I did struggle with this because I really wanted to get Jaron Ennis's TKO over Sergey Lipinets on the list, but I think the most eye-opening performance this year was Stephen Fulton's unanimous decision win over Angelo Leo to win the WBO World Super Bantamweight belt. First, it was the best fight on this list by a good margin in terms of just action. Second, the way Fulton won was extremely impressive. You discussed it. I mean, everyone figured he'd box on the outside against the hard-charging Leo, but instead, much of the fight was spent in close quarters. And although the action was good, Fulton dominated. I mean, most people watching that fight came away thinking that Fulton is far away, the number 1 guy in the stacked 122-pound division. And Mike, I was one of them.
Yeah, again, the fact that not only did he dominate him, but he dominated him fighting Leo's fight. It just says a lot about Fulton. Fulton is a special. And I don't think anybody's more gifted than Ennis, to be honest. I'm going to be completely honest. But Fulton's not that far behind him. He's extremely talented guy.
Yeah, 2 Philly guys. I mean, like I told you, I got to go out to Philly and get some food. I don't know what they're eating out there, but I definitely
Philly cheesesteak.
Yeah,
I'll go with you.
Now, who were your other honorable mentions?
Well, I mentioned Castaño and Teixeira, which almost made my list. I liked Virgil Ortiz's knockout of Maurice Hooker.
Yeah.
That sort of underscored what I thought about him, that he's a good, legitimate guy in that division. And I like Jamel Herring's knockout of Carl Frampton. I've always had a lot of respect for Carl Frampton, and Herring just took him out. Herring's a good fighter. So those are my 3 honorable mentions.
Yeah, those 2 were also on my honorable mentions, along with Ennis versus Lipinets, which I mentioned already. Another one, Rais Salim versus Vic Pasillas, was a really, really good fight. Richard Comey versus Jackson Marinas, another one. Michael Coffey, who's now established himself in the in the heavyweight division, knocking out Darmani Rock. I thought that was an excellent performance. Canelo versus Billy Joe Saunders, another one. Abel Ramos, who beat Omar Figueroa in a darn good fight. So, lots of good performances so far this year, and I expect that there will be many more. Now, with that, we are going to conclude this week's episode. We want to thank, of course, Shawn Porter and Brandon Figueroa for joining us. As a reminder, guys, be sure to like and subscribe and comment, good or bad, wherever you found the PBC podcast and whatever platform you listen to us on. And of course, be sure to check us out again next week for more boxing talk right here on the PBC podcast.